He has performed with the National Symphony Orchestra at the Kennedy Center and the, wow, this is difficult, Norrköping Symphony Orchestra in Sweden. Sweden that eliminated Italy from the World Cup. He's the best known for the recording-based parts of 5 seasons of Netflix House of Cards and the documentary Blackfish. Henry will be moving to Los Angeles this August to perform, record, compose, and teach music in the area. And Henry was also one of the members of the Berklee Global Jazz Institute ambassador that visited the Dominican Republic back in November. And we had the pleasure to travel together, and it was really an amazing experience. Please welcome Henry Beal.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marco. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you to the folks watching on the live stream as well. I'm really excited to share this project with you guys. It's called the Composition Project. This was basically my way of tackling a challenge that I had, or an insecurity that I had, which is that sitting down to write music was always a point of difficulty for me. And so getting into this, why I chose this, these challenges were based on like sitting at the piano and thinking like, okay, what do I want to write? Like where do I start? And then to sort of have that like the writer's block, but in the musical sense, and to feel like nothing that you were producing was quote unquote good enough according to some standards that I would have set. I wanted to investigate that for myself, and I was interested in hearing from some productive composers who do a lot of work and who are really successful, and hearing their daily process and how they go about writing this music that is so moving and wonderful, and to do that like every day as a part of your life. So at the Global Institute, there's this wonderful Daniel Perez concept called fear training, in contrast to the typical ear training you hear about in music school. It's a little different. Ear training typically constitutes like being able to hear different harmony and chords and to sort of understand music on like an intellectual level and compartmentalize it. But fear training is this idea of taking a concept or an action that is somewhat scary to you or uncomfortable and to just go into it as fully as possible and confront what's uncomfortable and to find the joy in it and to find a way to do it that's healthy and enjoyable. So that was my impetus for doing this. So my goals in doing this project were to interview some different composers, all of whom I had admired for various reasons, people that I was personally inspired to investigate and to work with. I wanted to learn about how they write every day, how they're able to be productive in this art form that is very demanding, honestly, because writing music is a difficult process. I wanted to find the commonalities within the advice that everyone had, because I think there would probably be some common themes, which there were. And I wanted to take some of these concepts that people were basically throwing my way and try to use them in my own writing process to be more productive. I also wanted to share my personal journey in writing music, because I think it's valuable for anyone to hear what a creative life looks like, because, I mean, we have these very justified and great reasons to be creative people, but the actual process of sitting down and doing it can be very challenging, and it's sort of like pulling material out of yourself. So finding a way to do that in like a healthier and easier way, I think, is really important. So I'm going to quickly introduce the people that I interviewed. First one was Kenny Werner, fantastic jazz pianist, wrote the book Effortless Mastery, which is all about learning to play without trying as much. Maria Schneider, wonderful big band composer and arranger. She leads her own jazz orchestra. So this is kind of a fun one. My dad, Jeff Beal, who is a fantastic, he's here in the audience right now, actually, there he is. He's a fantastic composer for media, film, and TV, and a huge inspiration, and a killer jazz trumpet player, too, so check him out if you haven't. Marco Pignataro, the director of our program, wonderful composer in his own right and a very inspirational figure, so him as well. John Tucci, another very inspirational figure from this program who I got to work with a lot and sort of learned about his process of writing from the bass and composing, which is very unique to him and wonderful. And finally, Ayn Inserto, who's a wonderful big band composer, arranger, conductor, and she leads her own jazz orchestra as well and teaches composition here at Berklee. So the first concept about writing music that I'm going to get into is this idea of like following your voice, which is kind of like a cliche, but I think there's some truth to this idea of finding an individual voice and sticking to it. My personal challenges were that I sort of had hesitance whenever I would like genuinely hear something. Like I would get a little idea like a little musical fragment, and then say like, oh, okay, oh, that's not good enough. I need to do something better than that. Instead of just like taking it at face value and then trying to develop it naturally. There's an idea of being hip enough that I kind of superimposed on myself after being in jazz education. It's like, oh, it needs to be this cool to be good. And I was trying to find a bar that didn't really exist instead of just writing. And finding authenticity just being the idea of actually hearing what you want to do instead of following an idea of what you think you should be doing. So some solutions that people sort of talked to me about and that really helped me personally to write some more music was developing a kernel of an idea, which I'm going to get more into later. But a kernel is like a small fragment of a musical idea instead of trying to like get a whole symphony out on paper or something, which is kind of impractical. Just taking like a 2-bar phrase or something and just to really develop it naturally. This was a great thing that John Tucci helped me with, which is to not write cliches. Like it's like, oh, there was this cool line I was hearing. It's like if that's why you're writing, it's probably not going to be very interesting or original. It's probably just going to be something idiomatic or kind of rote. And finally, Einan Serto's idea to put your ear on the piano and to sort of, which means, it's kind of a weird quote, but to like detach yourself when you're listening back and to not be super invested and like feel super connected to the music in a sense. I mean, obviously you want an emotional connection, but her take was that you need to be able to listen to it objectively and kind of have a detached view, which can be really helpful. All different ideas. None of this is gospel. These are all just suggestions. So this is a great quote from the interview I had with Maria Schneider. I'm going to play the audio for you now. This really helped me a lot.
It's funny because I think in the end the most important thing in music and art is having a voice. Not being great. It's having a voice and then being clear with that voice. And the greatness comes out of the clarity of that voice. And I think so many times in jazz, everybody thinks that being great is being technically more proficient, being harmonically more advanced, being rhythmically more ingenious, and all these things. And amidst that, I think a lot of times people go further and further from themselves. And I think that the greatness is really going inside of yourself and just saying, what do I want to hear? What do I want to do? What do I like? And shutting off all those voices.
So you guys could tell I was very interested. I obviously agreed with what she was saying. So that really helped me a lot, the idea of being an individual. So the first song I'm going to share with you guys that I wrote was something that started with a kernel, or just a quick fragment that I'm going to play for you right now. Oops. It's just this. So something that wasn't overly complicated, that maybe a past version of me would have said, oh, that's too simple, don't do anything with that. But I decided to stick with it and see where I kind of went with it. The next thing I wrote over this as I was sort of trying to find what this song was like a bass line, or what I thought was a bass line, but it actually kind of turned into a melody. So I'll go ahead and play that for you right now. It's just this. So that started developing, and I kind of felt that going some different directions. So the next thing I'm going to play for you is actually the recording from the session that I got to do with some fantastic musicians, some of which are here: Cosmo Boni, Ori Jacobson, Jason Yeager, myself, Chase Kiesel, and Daniel Babai, the engineer. So really great people I was lucky to work with. I'll go ahead and play you the recording. Thank you. All right. So the next topic that this kind of leads me to that I wanted to talk about is one of the aspects of writing music I found the most challenging in my own personal life and my own experience, which is finding a consistent routine, finding a way to just do this every day and in a sense that's not forced, that feels unnatural. It's really challenging for me because I tended to work better in spontaneous bursts. But anyway, so yeah, my challenge is finding a way to work that was authentic to myself, but also encouraged being productive. Setting up a good writing environment, which I hadn't really thought of before. I would always just be at the piano trying to make it work that way. And managing my time also. These are all just challenges for me in the sense that I'm very used to the structure of school. Being in school, this is my 5th year in school in a row, and it's you kind of get used to it. You get used to having assignments and sort of a regimented order in which things are supposed to go. So I've sort of missed that for myself, and I was like, okay, how do I create this in a way that's more me and less the school? So a really helpful suggestion I got from a lot of people was just to literally do it every day, which sounds so simple and cliche, but really helped me to figure a lot of stuff out for myself. So for a whole month in February, I wrote music every morning consistently, and I journaled a little bit about it, and I learned a lot about my own habits. This really helped me, actually. It was one of the best things I could have done. And it wasn't necessarily for me, it wasn't ideal. I tend to still prefer to work in a more spontaneous way, but it was great exercise in learning about my own habits. Yeah, and this is a great quote from Marco Pignataro that really helped me, that sometimes when music is not coming naturally, to just step back, take 5 minutes and let it go, because we can feel this pressure to work and it needs to come now, but often, for at least personally, I found that doing that can just tire you out and make you disillusioned or kind of miserable instead of you actually feeling connected to what you're writing. So the best thing you can do, in my experience, was just take a break. So let's see. So this is a great quote from my dad. I'll let you guys read it. This has helped me a lot. I had never heard writing being talked about as a muscle. That was a funny concept for me, but this really, really helped. Because it's not, you think of muscles that conjures imagery of weight training or something that's in a sense more regimented or I'm going to do this every day. And that is in a sense what a creative life can be, is that you can really just put in the hours and do it, which I hadn't really thought of before because it's almost sounded too strict, but this really helped me a lot, just getting better at what I did. So let's see. So this was fun. I was I was encouraged to, as you can see, go out of my comfort zone. Because it's like chicken scratch. Encouraged to write a little bit on paper, which was actually really great for me. Ina Serto and Maria Schneider both made a very adamant point about writing on paper. This really helped me personally because I just had a chance to disconnect from music notation, from the crutch that I was using of the piano, and to just really sit there and think, okay, what do I hear? Instead of the typical, what is cool, what is a cool voice thing, it's none of that. Just what am I hearing right now? So that helped me to kind of connect a little more to the music. In addition to that, getting out of my comfort zone and creating this routine for myself, I wanted to commission myself. This was a great idea from my advisor, Alan Chase, to commission myself to write a piece of music that was not what I would typically write. So what you heard on that first piece was sort of straight eighths. It had a sort of interesting harmonic feeling. That to me that's the music that just comes super naturally. This was not. Writing an up-tempo swing was not something I typically do, but I had so much fun getting to try it. And it was all because I just said, okay, I'm going to do this. This weekend I'm going to write this down and write this type of tune, and it's going to sound like this. I already have an idea. So anyway, I will play you the result featuring the same musicians I listed earlier. Oops. Right. That was Cosimo Boni, by the way, on the trumpet solo. So good. It was so good. I love it. All right. So the last kind of topic I wanted to talk about is this quote that I forget who told me this. I really wish I knew, but the sentence "perfect is the enemy of good" helped me so much. Like to stop trying to work. I mean, obviously nitpicking and editing is great, and you want to do that, but you can't let it get in the way of just putting something out there. That's really helped me because I'm kind of a chronic perfectionist. It's like I want things to just be just right, but I've kind of learned that in reality that nothing is ever going to be perfect, and that helped me so much to just put out what I had instead of meticulously toying with it, which doesn't really do anything for anyone. So it also relates directly to like having a fear of failure, which I think is a huge thing for any creative person. I mean, everyone kind of deals with this balance as far as I can tell. If I'm wrong, I'd love someone to correct me, but it's like we all have a fear of failure to some extent, I think. And the idea of imposter syndrome that I was also personally struggling with, like not feeling like, it's like, oh, I'm not a real composer. It's like, what does that even mean? You know, it's not a real, there is no such thing as a real composer. So just dealing with these, it's really so much of it was so much of a mind game for me of just trying to find a healthy way to approach it. So one of the most helpful things Kenny Werner ever said to me in a little email he wrote me was to just embrace your mistakes, and I'd never heard that said in that way or so clearly before. Instead of being like, oh no, it's a mistake, it's wrong, to like see what kind of comes out of it and what can be fun about that. And that's a huge thing emphasized at the Global Jazz Institute, because when we're performing, you have to just completely you just have to be totally vulnerable, just let it all out there and just be yourself, and just let the music be more important than your worries about things. So that was a huge help in terms of my compositional ability and my performing ability and personal stuff too. So it was really good. Another great little quote from John Tucci that helped me was the idea of getting the notes on the page first. This is a concept that is already well documented in the art forms of like visual art or writing, you know, like actual writing novels or articles or whatever that may be, just getting stuff on the page. And then from there you can edit, but you can't stop yourself before you even get something on there. That really helped me as well. Here's a quote from my interview with Kenny that was really interesting about finding the right thing and sort of minimizing your expectations. Oops. Let's see.
Anything anymore.
Oh no. There we go.
If you try to look for the right thing, you'll know it because you're stalled.
Yeah.
You're not writing anything anymore.
Yes.
And you'll miss all the possibilities because there is no right thing. And even if you find what you thought the right thing is, all it's going to be is predictable. Because the right thing means you have an idea of what a good composition should be. You write much freer if you don't even think you might have to. What's the most anxious moment in a composer? A blank page.
Yeah.
But that's only because you're trying to write something good.
Kind of poetic and blindingly simple. I was just like, what? Just blowing my mind. It's really great to talk to him. Let's see here. So this last song I'm going to show you guys is one that kind of went through a lot of different stages, and it was not by any stretch. Like, I know some people have this idea that great composers, or anyone, any kind of composer, will just put something on the page and it's done, but it just was not like that at all. So it started as like a groove-based idea in 4, which I'll play for you right now. Which was fun, and I liked it a little bit, but wasn't really, I couldn't really get anywhere with it. So the next day, I remember I woke up on the next day, and it was like, for some reason, I heard this in 7, which I'll go ahead and play for you guys right now. Just felt natural. It's kind of clave. So that, for whatever reason, I realized it was the same thing I wrote before, and it was like, oh, these two can kind of coexist. So what I tried to do is combine them, and that made it so much easier, and I just started writing this melody, and it all came out of these two ideas, which I initially thought were different, but actually ended up working pretty well. So I'll go ahead and play the song. So, just to kind of put a bow on it, a couple of closing thoughts I had for myself and hopefully translates to other folks as well. The vulnerability of this process was probably the hardest part for me in general, in writing and personal stuff. There's this aspect of having to just like show who you are in order to fully get what you need out of life, in a sense. I hope this isn't coming off as too big idea, but it really was important for me to just say, okay, this is what I want to do. I just have to be comfortable with that. It's just very surprisingly simple. And that's, I mean, all the greatest music that we love it because it's authentic, and the person is just being themselves. They're not trying to be someone else, usually, I think. So that helped me as well. And that everyone has insecurities, really. I mean, this just kind of goes without saying, but these are just things that help me to realize that I can actually do this. Yay. And that it's just a skill, and that anyone can do it, and writing music is extremely satisfying, and being a creative person is like what the world kind of needs right now. We kind of need people that can express themselves and be creative and be vulnerable and not be all walled off. So that's what I'm trying to get better at every day. So thank you all so much. Thank you to my amazing wife, Caroline, endless support. My parents who are both here, also wonderful. My advisor, Alan Chase, for all his help in shaping this. My wonderful teachers and mentors, too many people to thank. My peers for being inspiring, as always. And all the interviewees, and used some great books for research as well. So I guess that's it. Thank you guys so much.
All right. Mary Beal. Very well. Wonderful presentation. We have about 10 minutes for comments. Alan, do you want to start?
Henry, congratulations. First of all, I want to say the music that you wrote is beautiful. It's really, really effective and very well played. I thought you ran the recording session extremely well and got the results that you wanted. It's interesting to, I'm thinking as I watch this, first of all, it's very helpful. You know, you're addressing something that affects having, you know, taught for, I don't know how many years, 37 years or something, and been an advisor on these projects for 3 years now in this program. This is one of the number one problems that people have is getting over barriers to getting things on paper so that they can develop their compositions over time. What usually happens is that people use procrastination to get over their perfectionism. They basically wait till it's too late to do a really good job, and then they have to just do something, and they don't revise and improve what they wrote.
Guilty.
But you did not do that. I mean, you came, in spite of identifying this tendency in yourself, you like solved it throughout the process. I mean, I felt like you were just a little behind for a little while, but you really did that daily writing thing, and it was productive and effective. And I think that's really interesting that just addressing it honestly almost solved it. I mean, I think you got excellent information and advice from your interviews, and they were well chosen and well conducted. Like the questions you asked, people seemed to enjoy talking to you, and it really went well. I guess the only question I have for you at the moment is, what do you think you will do next with composition? Do you feel like the drive to keep doing this? Maybe after a little bit of a break.
Yeah, no, absolutely I do. It's obviously a hectic time in my life. There's a lot of wonderful stuff going on. Like, I just got married last week. It's just like, it's great. Totally great. But just totally insane as well. So I'm kind of, but yes, to answer your question, I do feel a drive in a lot of ways to continue this. I mean, because it's so fun, and it's become more joyful for me now, which I don't think is necessarily always part of the equation. So it was nice to just approach it that way. And for this project too, in the future, I could see bringing this kind of thing, interviewing some more people, like different kinds of writers and stuff. Like I kind of want to keep doing this. Like I just think it's kind of important. Well, not kind of, it is important to talk about the actual process, the creative process in this way, maybe in music education contexts or schools or other ways. I think it's important that this is like a consciously thought of thing, that we are all feeling these insecurities and we're all trying our best to put ourselves out there. So, yeah. Yeah,
that's great. I hope you'll continue to share it with people. I think also being a player who composes and has to practice and keep your instrumental skills in shape, which, by the way, sound fantastic on this recording.
Thank you.
Is an extra challenge. It's a different challenge from being a composer who's not performing. So you can bring a lot of that to your teaching and sharing in the future. Thanks. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Henry, congratulations. It's finally I hear all the music and it's very interesting sounds and very very nice compositions. I think that I definitely see how this project, like Alan was saying, you can probably develop it further, from a pedagogical point of view, and come up even maybe with a book with, more ideas, more information. I mean, we talk about stuff in the pedagogy class. I can see how you can really keep on developing, this idea. I like the angle of your research and how, the thing about interviewing, and coming up with very practical ideas. I think one of the things I would suggest for you to explore as a next step in composition for your own music, maybe investigating music outside of your culture, maybe even outside the jazz culture, and having other sound and other ideas to basically coloring your next composition, and see if that could be another thing you can develop as well. But I really want to congratulate this, and I wanted to ask you finally, where do you stand right now differently as you did a year ago arriving in the program?
Yeah, I feel...
Besides the fact that you just got married.
Just got married. No.
That's it.
That's actually it. I'm exactly the same. No, that's a really great... Yeah, absolutely. It's great. Yes. But no, in all...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. In all honesty, I've found by interacting in these ways with other people, from very different backgrounds and different places around the world, and I've become more comfortable with myself. That's been a huge leap, I think, because I had gotten kind of comfortable in the position as a sideman, of like, I just do my thing and I don't get looked at and everything's fine, But now I feel a little more comfortable being a leader figure in a musical and non-musical sense. Like I feel more able to understand people who just have radically different opinions from me and say, okay, like that's great, like let's meet somewhere in the middle. I just feel a little less opinionated, a little more sure of myself, and a little bit just more joyful. So, yeah, it's been really good.
Bruno.
Yeah, I was just tying in exactly what Marco was saying. I wrote down some things here: honest introspection and reflection. And the way I see it visually is like this year you paved the way for your future, and you get a lot of hurdles out of the way. It's like a snow plow. I'm from Sweden, so I think in snow and ice and
Winter
stuff like
terms,
that.
you're in the right place.
But I see this incredible growth, and I think as you've been talking about, you've been very honest about your insecurities around all this. But you've been really working on that, thinking about it, and you're just taking a big step out there now. And the music is beautiful, the playing is great. Good luck.
Thank you.
Henry, wow, it's sometimes when you hear like you get to know people. That's why I jump on the marriage thing, because I was telling Alan Chase and the group backstage that when I started playing with Wayne, he's looking at me with that death look that you know very well. And he asked me, I thought he was going to ask me a musical lesson, like practice this or check out this. He said to me, why are you afraid of getting married? And, first of all, people seem to have a lot of desire, you come here for a year and you want to find your course in the art, And one of the things I want to congratulate you, because I come from a family where my father is super talented. He's an incredible singer. And throughout my whole life, I couldn't get away from, you are Danilo Perez's son. And in that piece of music, the last one I heard something like an opening of a new sound for you. And it's almost, for me, it feels like a gratitude to your life. And without, a lot of times, everything that I heard from people, what they say, you heard it in global. and you know it yourself, and you probably heard it at home too.
Yep.
From your mother, from your father, and you're gonna hear it from your wife too. Here is what I'm a big admirer of what I saw in you. When you came, there was a little bit of frisky in the, everything was so like you, such a high energy. And I wanted to tell you, Henry, slow down. Let's play a ballad. But I had to find, you taught me how to deal with this. You, a bunch of you, all of you actually. I learned so much this year as a working with you. But the one thing that I heard in everything now that you say, you're finding comfort in quiet. I think that's the greatest lesson that I heard. Forget everything everybody say. You are finding comfort in quiet. You are okay with silence now. You can be silenced and telling a lot. You're sitting moment to moment without judgment. I think still you went into the judgment thing for a second and you found yourself into, oh no, okay, you stop right now, which is great. You were gonna like, oh, I started with this and it was kind of like, but then you stop. That's what I'm talking about. That's great. Sit moment to moment without judgment, not fighting for certainty and not dismissing something because this defies our perceived notion of what is correct or is wrong. Thank you for, more than being a student, also teaching us to share knowledge with you. And the music, the last thing you wrote is stay on that track, man. It's a pleasure, a privilege working with you.
You got it. Thank you so much.
Beautiful what he said, right? He said so much. The first question that I see in what you've done, what you've presented to us, is a very important question.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that I don't know that I can learn here? That's what you illustrated to us. That question, the questioning. That's all that an artist is. That's everything that an artist is. Good work.
All right. Henry Beal, thank you.